The Inspector General slams former FBI Director James Comey. Comey demands an apology. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, I know you've followed this story closely over time, but this is breaking news from the last 24 hours as we record this show. The Inspector General of the Justice Department released a report basically saying, and I'm summarizing here, forgive me all you legal eagles for how I get things wrong, but basically saying that James Comey was disclosed unauthorized information, possibly sensitive or classified material, and he did so for personal benefit, violating not only FBI policy, but the terms of his employment. The Inspector General did not recommend charges, nor are any charges pending against former Director Comey. Comey takes to Twitter and basically says, hey, all you people who said I broke the law, you don't need to publicly apologize, but I would appreciate a quick note that said, I'm sorry I lied about you. Bill, just on the face of it, what do you make of this new revelation, if you want to call it that? Does it change the status quo in any way?
This is one of the very few times when I had a pretty clear idea what the question was going to be, just based on its prominence and all the rest of it.
Did I leak some material that allowed you to know this?
Not in the slightest bit. It
Okay.
just seemed like this is something we've talked about a lot, and then the report came out, and this is the first shoot since then, so it just seemed like a logical deduction. So I was thinking about this quite a lot, just on the drive in. If nothing happens to James Comey, then something much worse than what James Comey did will happen. James Comey clearly, along with others, Brennan and all the underlings, Strzok and all the rest of them, basically had an internal coup to make sure that the American people were not left with the determination of who would be the next president. They knew who would be better for America, and so they took actions that are not just improper and not just illegal. They're treasonous. They are treason to the idea of America, and so the thing that could happen that's worse than that. The only thing I can think of that's worse than the United States government using its internal agencies to weaponize the government against the American people would be for nothing to happen as a result of this, for there to be no consequences for this.
Well, Bill, as you well know, Comey would make the opposite argument. He would say the reason he was even taking notes on his meetings with President Trump, some 9 meetings of which some 7 documents exist as his personal notes, were because he was concerned that there be a paper trail later on because the president was trying to influence his investigation.
Influence the investigation that he started, knowing full well that there was no grounds for the investigation in the first place, as the Mueller report indicates. So Comey, it doesn't even matter what the motivation is. Comey can have it one way or the other, but he can't have it both ways. He can't be the savior of the republic and not leaked information and committed a felony. So which one is it going to be? Are you going to be the guy who leaked information at the risk of your career to save America from a fate worse than death, or are you a guy who's just basically a party politics hack who just happened to write some memos and you have no idea how they got out there? You can't have them both. And so for Comey to claim this kind of exalted moral status is incomprehensible to me, but well, let me rephrase that. It's incomprehensible how a person of conscience could do such a thing, but obviously James Comey's got no trouble with it. And I just wanted to say this is what I was getting at. If nothing comes of this, if Hillary Clinton and James Comey and all the rest of them just walk, then something worse than a coup against the sitting president will have occurred. The destruction of the idea of rule of law will be a thing of the past in this country. It will be over. If these people get away with it, I personally feel that the social compact is broken in that case. And for those of us not familiar with the term, the social compact is the idea that the people elect representatives who have a great amount of power, and the deal is that they will be beholden to the same laws as we are, and when they're no longer beholden to the same laws as we are, then the authority that I grant them over my life, I rescind. I take it back. And And this is what I have the power to do as an individual with God-given rights. I have decided if the law is not going to be followed by the people at the top, then there's no reason why we should follow it at the bottom.
Well, Comey would insist that he, in fact, did follow the law. However, in TheHill.com, Jonathan Turley, who's a famous attorney and commentator on news events, said that the report from the Inspector General, and I'm quoting here from The Hill, states that Comey not only knowingly violated rules governing all FBI employees, but that his self-serving decisions set a dangerous example for over 35,000 current FBI employees. Now, meanwhile, Comey and others, including at Lawfare, a legal blog that kind of leans left, have basically said, look, everybody takes notes in government and people take their notes home. And not everybody thinks that every note has to be protected because as far as Comey knew, at least initially, he didn't have any classified information. To counter
what does that have to do with them being
memos leaked? In a safe at his house. So clearly he didn't think it was, just public information like the newspaper that he could leave lying on his porch. It seems like there are two different stories here. How it got out was he gave it to a friend of his who leaked it to the New York Times. He knew that his friend was going to leak it to the New York Times, and he did so that a special counsel would be appointed, and ultimately Robert Mueller was.
Okay, so there's no question that he leaked information that was classified. If it was important enough for him, if they were just notes that he kept in a safe, and he leaked those notes, internal notes of a discussion that was obviously held in private and probably in secret in terms of the things that were discussed, if he handed those notes to a friend, forget whether the friend leaked them. It doesn't matter whether the friend leaked them. The friend could have burned them on the spot. It doesn't matter. If James Comey gave notes to somebody else that were his private notes, that apparently were important enough for him to keep in a safe, then he has committed a felonious act of breach of security. And there's no two ways around it. Now, you can argue, I don't buy it, but you can argue that, yes, I committed this crime for the greater good of the country. That's an argument. But you can't have it both ways. You can't say, I did this thing which I don't think was wrong, even though the law says it was wrong, and I did it for the good of the country. It's typical Comey. It's typical James Comey. He's covering his butt. He's trying to make sure he doesn't make any admission of guilt, but at the same time, he wants to be the savior of the republic and the big hero of conscience. He's just a hero of conscience that's too chicken to have to face the consequences of the actions that he thought were so unbelievably patriotic in the first place. It is a low, mean thing to do. And my opinion of the man, which I didn't think could get much lower, I find out that no, when you hit bottom, you can keep digging.
Well, Bill, James Comey not only says that he didn't do anything illegal, but the Inspector General, while saying that he violated FBI rules and he violated his terms of employment, there's a difference between violating terms of employment or internal house rules and violating the law. And the IG is not pressing for charges that would be, in your terms, holding him to account for felonious activity. The IG is not saying that.
Yes, and this is the part that hangs in the balance, and this is the conversation I had with myself on the way in today. So the question is, what happens now? People have speculated that Barr has decided not to press charges against or try to seek some sort of disciplinary action against Comey, because he's putting together a case that is much larger than this, that he's putting together the super case for what is in fact a conspiracy to overthrow the president of the United States. Is not.
That sounds like Trump supporter wishful thinking.
No, well, let me get to that part of it. I am the most unconspiratorial thinker that I know of. I don't believe in conspiracies, but this one is just plain in open daylight. And Jeff Epstein just suddenly having a chance to commit suicide is an indication that this has gone from the realm of lunatic speculation into the realm of pretty terse kind of a movie suspense thriller, into the world of pretty much undeniable factual reality. So,
Bill, you can't say I'm not a conspiracy theorist and then try to tie James Comey to Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh, really? Really? So you're telling me that when the director of the Internal Revenue Service several years ago says that the emails in question about her using the Internal Revenue Service against conservatives, that when those emails in question were erased from a computer by accident, and then when she was challenged on this, we find out that they were also erased by accident on something like 1,500 backups at the same time. You find that do you find that a reasonable explanation for what happened in that case?
So now you're bringing in a third case to,
yes.
Again, it sounds like you're propounding a conspiracy theory,
Not,
like there's, there's premeditation and there's a tie-in among all these departments in some sort of a shadow government.
I am exactly precisely that is what I'm doing, yes. And I'm doing it with enormous reluctance, and I'm late to the train because I'm so reluctant to believe these kind of things. But this is not just assertions. This isn't just like, oh, this might have happened or whatever. This isn't the Rothschild or any of that nonsense. This is actual evidence of collusion on the part of Democratic operatives who've been appointed, not elected, appointed to high office, and whose shenanigans, to say the least of it, are in such broad open daylight that this is not a conspiracy. This is not, let me rephrase that. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a conspiracy with evidence in broad daylight. And to say that conspiracies don't exist is nuts. You can say that Lincoln, that there was a conspiracy to kill Abraham Lincoln, and you would be 100% correct in that. It was a conspiracy of 5 conspirators, and there's no question that that was the case. So just because a conspiracy theory is often on pretty shaky grounds doesn't mean there's no such thing as a conspiracy. I personally would never have credited it 3 years ago, but this isn't the country I lived in 3 years ago. I am absolutely saying this. I am saying that there is irrefutable evidence of weaponization of the government, there's so much, Scott, you can't even list it. Loretta Lynch meeting with Bill Clinton on the tarmac before the investigation of Hillary's concluded, and talking about their grandchildren, and all of this stuff with Strzok and all of this stuff with Brennan and all of it. No, there is in fact, I think, clear, and when I say clear, I mean level of beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law clear, that this is going on. And so the question now becomes very simple, extremely simple. The question now will be this, are there going to be consequences for James Comey, for Hillary Clinton, for Brennan and all the rest of them? Are there going to be consequences or not? If it turns out that this Attorney General, our Attorney General, Barr, current Attorney General, if he's not able to bring a case for this, then not only is the rule of law destroyed in this country, but look, people say he's not my president. He is my president. Obama was my president. I have a say in it, and I had my say, and I was outvoted in 2008 and 12. So this is different. This isn't politics. If it turns out that you can get away with these kind of things at this top level, then not only is my confidence in the government destroyed, my confidence in the rule of law is destroyed, but on a much more primal level and on a much more satisfying level too. And I think many of our viewers will be able to connect to this. If it turns out that this is the case, we do not have to simply accept it with our heads bowed as our masters continue to whip us across the back. If it turns out that there are no consequences for these obvious felonies and acts of treason, if there's no consequences for it, then I'm just going to do what I said I was going to do, and I recommend everybody else does it too. The government is empowered by the people. If the government is able to act above reproach and above consequences for breaking the law, then I withdraw my support of that government. I withdraw the power upon which they're based. The social compact is broken, and I want them replaced with people who are willing to obey the law. And if that's not going to happen, then my obligation to do anything under the law is over. My obligation to pay taxes, my obligation to obey speed limit signs, my obligation to do anything under the laws of politics anyway, because the laws of God and natural law are different things. But my political obligations are null and void. I don't have to. Why would I have to pay taxes to a government that is being used against me?
So even some commentators on the left are now criticizing Comey and basically saying, look, you came out and destroyed Hillary Clinton's chances of winning the 2016 election by announcing a bunch of charges against her for irresponsible handling of documents, for wiping servers of emails, for transferring emails that may have contained sensitive or classified information to people outside of secure government servers. You did all that and did not press charges or did not recommend that charges be pressed. And now you're trying to make it look like you're some sort of a Boy Scout because you took some documents home and locked them in your safe and only released them to the media because you wanted to make sure that a special counsel was appointed so justice could be done. Even the left's going after him for that.
James
do you
Comey
think you're
is
going to
a
find common ground with some of your buddies on the left now?
I don't know. I'll tell you one thing. If the left spoke as a bloc and the right spoke as a bloc, and I was somehow magically elected as a representative of the conservative bloc, and I had a chance to speak to a representative of the progressive bloc, and the deal was that we would just trash this entire government, not the structure. The structure's profoundly good. But if we were to take every single one of the people in government now and throw them out and then just have elections for every single office, I would take that deal in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat, I would take it. Absolutely, I would take it. Because then the American people could decide again for themselves who they want in these positions, and elections would have consequences. And elections would be elections, rather than a sham that's perpetuated by the people who determine the future. I don't care about the future. Forget the future of the American people. It's not relevant. It's not relevant. What's relevant from the theory of this government, from the theory of this entire country, the American people's interests are not relevant. What's relevant is your interest personally. If you allow this to happen, you are agreeing to an aristocracy. You're agreeing to a system of government where the people who are doing the governing are not held accountable to the same laws as the people who are governed. And I will not be a part of that. I won't.
So here's what the lawfare blogger at lawfareblog.com, Benjamin Whittle, says, and this is under a story headline, what that Comey email report really says, meaning the Inspector General of the Justice Department's report. The Inspector General of the Justice Department has determined that it is misconduct for a law enforcement officer to publicly disclose an effort to shut down his investigation. So the way he's positioning this, Lawfare Blog is essentially saying that the Inspector General is squashing a whistleblower. That whistleblower is James Comey. The whistle that he's trying to sound says the President of the United States is trying to shut down my investigation. And so by ruling the way he has, the Inspector General is essentially sending a cold, chill wind across the government to say, don't you speak up against corruption within our ranks because you are going to come under the opprobrium of others in government.
I want to answer that, then I want to say two quick things. First of all, the investigation in question, the one that Comey claims is being squashed, was that the Mueller investigation?
Well, the Mueller investigation hadn't started yet, but the FBI
but was it the Mueller investigation?
No, because there was no Mueller. There were a number of probes.
Let me rephrase the question. Was it an investigation into collusion between Donald Trump and the Russian government to affect American elections?
Yes.
Okay, so that became known as the Mueller investigation. Can we agree on that?
I don't know if I have to agree on that because I feel like you're leading me into something I don't want to go into.
Of course you don't. But we both agree. We both know whether we agree, because the second you just backed out of that question, you knew where I was going. You knew I won. That's why you just backed out of it. That's why you backed out of that logical step. Was Comey's investigation in question about Trump's colluding with the Russians? Yes. Well, wasn't that the Mueller investigation? Well, I don't know if I want to go there. You don't want to go there because the investigation was not only not squashed, it spent 2 years, $50 million, and couldn't come up with anything. So the entire argument
because James Comey got a special counsel appointed because he leaked this information to the New York Times.
James Comey got a special. The evidence upon which Comey claims to have acted is evidence that he himself created.
It's notes that he created from conversations with the president where the president said things like, I hope you can leave Mike Flynn alone.
All right, Scott, well, first of all, I hope you can leave Mike Flynn alone is not exactly I order you not to prosecute Mike Flynn. But let's just move on to this. You are basically saying, what Comey is saying is, I took notes on a meeting. I formed a personal opinion about these notes. I leaked these notes to the press so that my personal opinion about information that never should have been public anyway, I leaked these notes to the press in order to start an investigation into things that, in my opinion, were not completely upright or kosher, whatever you want to call it.
That's a fairly fair assessment of what Comey believes, yes.
Okay, so now to the consequences. All right, now to the consequences. I maintain, others maintain, most people who study this case maintain, that Comey knew in advance that there was no grounds for this investigation. So since he couldn't get the investigation, when I say he, since the cabal couldn't get the investigation against Trump by any other means, because for the simple reason, Scott, that there was no evidence for it.
Well, Jonathan Turley makes the argument that, in fact, he could have gotten that investigation and there were other avenues for him to pursue. In fact, that's why he's critical of Comey for leaking the memos. He said, you could have gone to Congress with your concerns.
Yes. Now we have a thinker who wrote this article who's gone 9 out of the 10 steps. Yes, the director of the FBI could present evidence that would get an investigation launched into the presidency of the United States, which begs the question, why didn't he? And the answer that he is so obvious as staring everybody in the face is the reason Comey did not go through official channels was because Comey knew that there was no evidence other than the evidence that he himself created. And there's no other way around it. There's no other way around it. If he had evidence on Donald Trump, he could have gotten his investigation. He wouldn't have had to do this leak. And the reason he did the leak was because the evidence consisted of things that James Comey wrote down as an opinion at the highest level, to give him the greatest possible credit.
So you're asserting that he was willing to risk his decades-long reputation of being an honorable man and a Boy Scout and a faithful servant of the American public. He was willing to risk all of that on something he knew not to be true in order to get an investigation that would just cause a political impact for a couple of years.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. Because the outcome of, look, none of this makes sense. None of this makes sense unless you go back to the end of October of 2016, when during the Obama administration, right up until the election of Donald Trump, everybody knew that Hillary Clinton was going to win. Everybody knew she was going to win. So Comey and all the rest of these criminals, and Loretta Lynch and Eric Holder, all the rest of them, were governing as if they'd never lose again. And it looked like they were right. And along comes this thunderbolt, which was the American people getting up on their hind legs and producing an election result that could not be falsified. It was too great to falsify. You can probably swing 2-3% of the vote, which is enough to win most times, but no. So what happens? Now all these people who've been in collusion together suddenly find themselves facing multiple felony counts from a Department of Justice that doesn't belong to them anymore. And so the entire idea is, let's see if we can stall this thing. Let's see if we can tie Donald Trump up. Worst case scenario, it'll buy us a couple of years of freedom and absolutely tarnish Donald Trump's reputation, because we're going to drag his name through the trash, which they did for 2 years, as being a puppet of Vladimir Putin. Worst case scenario.
Perhaps Comey was doing this because he felt bad for having destroyed Hillary Clinton's chances of getting elected.
Now we get to the thing that I wanted to say. And I have studied a certain aspect of psychology intensely. I'm very interested in it. And I'm not going to offer a clinical diagnosis of malignant narcissism, which is the diagnosis that was given to Ted Bundy. But nevertheless, James Comey is a very, very mentally disturbed guy. And the reason I can say this with confidence is not because he went against the president that I like, is not because he did all the things that he did. You could have a rational explanation, I guess, for all of this. But James Comey is really genuinely not well mentally. Comey, if you want to understand James Comey, it's pretty simple. Look at the picture, look at photographs of Comey's face when he's testifying. He is his own image of what this so-called man of conscience is.
The halo was a little much, I thought.
What?
The halo was a little much.
Yeah. So what about this man of conscience? What about this hero of the Republic? What about this brave whistleblower? Well, he comes out after investigation and basically spends 45 minutes absolutely and concisely and totally demolishing Every single defense that Hillary Clinton made. I had no top secret emails on the server. There were 111 top secret emails. I didn't do it. There were 400. Just bam, 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 bam. So that's the psychopath doing what he does, which is wanting to have it both ways. This is James Comey standing up as a representative of the American people. And he's listed this, and he's listed this, and he's listed this, he's done his duty. Then the part of him that's the psychopath, well, the fact that he's got these two parts is pretty disturbing anyway. Then that other part kicks in. And that part is, since I am a man of such unbelievable virtue, I realize now that that I'm going to recommend not pressing charges. And so much in the manner as he's doing right now, I get to have it both ways. I get to be the champion of truth and everything that the FBI represents. And at the same time, I'm not going to bring charges against a person who I've spent the last half hour convicting of felonies based on the evidence of my report. I'm not going to do it. See, that way I'm going to be even more of a hero. And the last thing I want to say is this, because this one's going on. But let me just say this. I have briefly gotten to know a relatively high-level person in the FBI. We weren't close friends. We're not close friends now, but I spent some time together for a while. And I got to know him well enough to ask him what the reaction was among the rank and file agents of the FBI when James Comey did the Hillary Clinton investigation conclusion speech. And he told me that the entire bureau in his particular branch, whatever field agents were available in the office at that time, everybody was gathered around the TV. And as Comey started to list these felonious breaches of security and just plain outright lies, he said the room got more and more excited. The agents were getting more and more excited. They were feeling like, my God, look at this. The FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, that law enforcement agency that we've dedicated our lives to, that we've lost agents to, that people have been killed for, that we risk our lives for every single day, is doing its job. This is what the FBI is supposed to do. And he said to me that when Comey announced that he would not press charges, or not recommend that charges be pressed, there was silence in that room. And then essentially 30 people just threw their coffee cups in the air. So the question is, are there enough honest people left in government who are willing to fight this rot and all of the psychological momentum that comes with it? I don't want to disobey my superiors. I don't want to ruin my career. I've got a family to feed. I have house payments to make. All of these things, all of them. The reaction, the emotional reaction from those agents restored my faith in the FBI. My faith in the FBI went along with my faith in James Comey. But when I heard this story, I began to realize that he is not the FBI, that he doesn't represent the FBI, that he is in fact, well, I'll just tell you what my friend who was a relatively high-level FBI guy said. He said that James Comey has done more damage to the FBI in a year than the entire Soviet Union could have done to us in 60 years.
Facing the truth 5 days a week, Bill Whittle now gives you Bill's analysis of the breaking news of the day. We're grateful to the members of BillWhittle.com who have made this enterprise possible. We produce some 45 to 50 new shows every month, and not a one of them gets done without help from our members. If you'd like to join that membership team, go to BillWhittle.com and click that Become a Member link. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.